7 articles were obtained, and this after scanning. The first point was to scan on literature title and abstract. So we excluded some 286. We remained within 91, and this was after full review. We excluded 45, and it remained 46 articles that were included in this systematic review. Results. Study characteristics. Most of the study were concerned about ethnomedicine. They studied on the contents of some medicinal plants, and 11 studies were from conservation and anthropology, and some of modern medicine, and the policy matters contained 3 articles, and the commercialization and information had 2 articles each. But more on supply and the demand context of the medicinal plants, it was shown from literature that the most source of these medicinal plants was 98% were obtained from wild source and 2% cultivated, which raised that question of conservation of these medicinal plants. But the demand side is much affected by pluralism healthcare system that is considered about the traditional medicine system and the modern traditional system. So it's affected much more on how people consume these medicinal plants. They can use facilities of modern medicine, kind of influence consumption of traditional medicine, or they can use some traditional medicine with the modern medicine. And the structure of the supply was contradicted in the different literatures because harvesters, collectors, middlemen, tradition healers, vendors, and the customers were stated in very different aspects, because others they leave middlemen and consider as traditional healers as one of instead they exchange between the middlemen and the traditional healers. So they lack some of description of value addition activities. But also the trade conduct was described as informal practice now, but what nature of the informal? Is it informal product or informal market or institutional landscape regulating these medicinal plants? Informal product, is it because they are not registered, they call it informal? Or because they sell in different markets, they call it informal? That was contradicting found in literature. But for those 46 literature that reviewed, none of the studies focused on improvement on the promotion of medicinal plants trade. The evidence that this can be one of the overlooked research areas. The trend of research lacked key information in medicinal plants, like value chain of the medicinal products and its trade mechanism. Further, the declared informal status of medicinal plants trade demands more studies, nature of informal and initiative to formalize them. So conclusion, despite the importance of medicinal plants trade in Tanzania, its understanding has relied on isolated bits and pieces of information from other researchers. It has been treated like a minor subject on exchange of this important area of medicinal plants. As I said, exchange is very important because it can influence the quality of these medicinal products. From that conclusion, we recommend that to carry the business and economic research on medicinal plants products, especially how value chain is look like and how it some of the value addition activities are done, but also to the third business model. How can we integrate the ethnomedicine users, conservation aspects, and economic benefits? How can we bring together instead of taking every aspect individually and not coming all together? But also the studies to identify the value addition activities which are important in improvement of product and how then they can shift from informal market that they are dominating to some of the formal market. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Judge.
And now I welcome Klaus. And all of you have been keeping time quite nicely. So, Klaus, I also hope you continue the trend. Yeah.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Klaus Thomas. I'm presenting on the prevalence of Rickettsia typhi in rodent fleas from area with and without previous history of plague in Imbulu district, Tanzania. I actually appreciate the funders as a tool, and also this study is just a combination of different ideas from other co-authors. So, murine typhus is a flea-borne infectious disease caused by Rickettsia typhi. The disease is transmitted by flea, mostly Xenopsila chopsis, that are found on rodents. The disease has similarities. The way they transmit resembles to typhus. Wherever you find plague, there is also possibility to find urine typhus. So now we are trying to see whether is it wherever you find plague you get Rickettsia typhi, or it's prevalent anywhere regardless of plague infection. So we have villages with previous history of plague and villages that had not yet encountered plague some days back. So our objective is to detect R. typhi in rodent fleas by PCR in those two areas, as I've said before. The materials and methods. We use cross-sectional study in two villages between this 2018 to February 2019. We had two villages, villages that encountered plague and villages that did not have a history of plague, as we did the retrospective study. So how did we go to material methods? Rodents were trapped using a Sherman trap, as you can see. In both forested and agricultural trap were set inside houses. So we had a Sherman trap that were used to collect rodents from the forest and farms. Also we had box traps that were within houses, as you can see there. So rodents were now anesthetized and brushed, as you can see, where we can brush first and have fleas. Then those fleas were now preserved in ethanol for further laboratory work. So now, after getting those, remember we are trying to get DNA of Rickettsia typhi. We are trying to get the DNA of Rickettsia typhi from the fleas. So we did extraction of DNA. We did extraction of DNA, and now we amplified a targeted gene, that is citrate synthase gene, that is targeting the R. typhi using that set of primers. Now the results showed that we had positive individuals that had R. typhi, and some were from farms, that is 20%, and 4% were from forest in areas with plague history, but also we had also positives, individuals that had Rickettsia typhi from areas that had no plague history. So now we can now give we did some of chi-square and see how the association and other statistics, and we found that prevalence of R. typhi was not statistically different between two villages, that is with and without previous history of plague. The urine typhus is not associated with plague in the studied area. Also, murine typhus has to be read and be done more of study, because we have more than 2 to 3 sites that has previously outbreak of plague. So we can now go further and see and add more studies on murine typhus, because it can be a potential threat to communities and individuals. So generally our conclusion is that prevalence of murine typhus is independent of plague infection. And now we recommended that longitudinal surveillance of fleas, their rodent host and disease carrier status is needed to determine the geographic distribution, habitat and preference of pathogens. Also, further isolation and the characterization of Rickettsia is essential in order to identify locally circulating strain and their potential threat to humans. And also we have to intensify awareness of plague and other potential rodent-borne diseases in Imbulu, but also in other areas where rodent vectors are dominant. So thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much. I think you really saved us some 2 or 3 minutes, so that was great, as you promised. Now let's call our last presenter for this session before we go to the question and answers. Wilson, please. Wilson will be followed by question and answers to all the 4 presenters, and then we'll go to 4 other presenters. Wilson, you can now guide us through your presentation.
And during the question and answer session, I will request Ndosi to help us with the repertoire.
Infection in pigs in Kongwa and Songwe district in Tanzania. To start with, porcine cysticercosis is an infection caused by a zoonotic tapeworm, which is Tinea sorium, and it is transmitted between humans, among humans and pigs. The parasite has been ranked as the most important zoonotic tapeworm globally by World Health Organization, and also the porcine cysticercosis can be spread via oral route transmission when pigs or humans ingesting water or food which is contaminated with the parasite eggs. And also, porcine cysticercosis can be a serious economic loss and among smallholder pig farmers and also pork industry in Tanzania, due to the cost associated with the contamination of the infected carcasses, and also due to the barrier of trading pigs and pork locally and also internationally. Why I'm doing this study? Porcine cysticercosis still remains a public health challenge in many rural areas in central and southern parts of Tanzania, and over 19% of the people with epilepsy are suffering from neurocysticercosis in our country. And however, there has been no any large study that has been assessed the effectiveness of health education intervention on porcine cysticercosis and human cysticercosis simultaneously. This study has 2 specific objectives. First is to determine the baseline prevalence of porcine cysticercosis in Kongwa and Songwe districts, and second is to determine the factors which is associated with the Tinea sorium infection in pigs in Kongwa and Songwe districts. This is a map of the study area. The one labeled A indicates the Kongwa district, and you can see a map of Tanzania, which with red box indicating the relative location of Kongwa district in the Dodoma region, central part of Tanzania, and also the one labeled B is indicating the Songwe district, and an inset also is a map of Tanzania with red box indicating the relative location of Songwe district in the Songwe region in the southwestern part of Tanzania. And also the red triangle marks for the study villages. This study was a cross-sectional design conducted between June to September on 2019. And multi-stage sampling technique was used to sample villages household respondents and pigs. And also a probability proportional to pig population size was used to select villages basing on the selection criteria, which was the first, the accessibility of the villages, and the second, the village must have at least a minimum number of 20 pig keeping households, resulting to 450 pig owners in Kongwa district and 242 pig owners in Songwe district. So in order to determine the first objective, which was to determine the seroprevalence, the blood sample was collected by using the sterile vacutainer needle into a plain vacutainer tube from the jugular vein of the pig, and the serum sample was harvested, which was stored prior to the laboratory analysis, and by the use of a commercially available antigen analyzer assay, the serum sample was diagnosed to determine the seroprevalence of the porcine cysticercosis. And also, in order to determine the risk factors which is associated with the tinea sodium infection in Kongwa and Songwe districts, an household interview together with an observation checklist was conducted in the study area. As you can see in the picture, the one on my left hand demonstrates the questionnaire administration. The questionnaire was administered by face-to-face interview with the household head, or in his absence, any member of the family who could deliver the required information was interviewed. And also, for the observation checklist, we just viewing to verify and assessing the hygiene and sanitary practice around the household. As you can see in this picture, a pig is coming from a latrine. This latrine has an open door, so it is easy for the pig to access the latrine. How do I do the data analysis? By the use of statistical package for social science version 20, the data was analyzed and the chi-square test was used to test the association between the categorical variable, and also to determine the strength of association. The odds ratio by using the binary logistic regression method was used to determine the risk factors, and the one with p-value less than 0.05 was statistically significant. Here is the result from this finding. The general seroprevalence in Kongwa district was 70%, and the overall seroprevalence in Songwe district was 14%. And also there was difference in prevalence in the village, which is ranging from 0 to 26 in Kongwa district, and from 5 to 33 in Songwe district. And also on the practice of the respondents, which was associated with tinea sodium porcine cysticercosis transmission, majority of the household have latrine, as you can see on that table, but among those households with latrine, over 65% of the household, they don't have hand washing facility like water and soap in Kongwa district, and over 86% they don't have hand washing facility in Songwe districts. And also about the pig layering system, 12% of the surveyed households practice free-range pig management in Kongwa districts, as well as 57% of the surveyed households practice free-range pig management in Songwe districts. And also about the risk factors, for this study, only the age of pig and absence of latrine was significantly associated with the prevalence of porcine cysticercosis, and the adult pig were shown to be a significantly higher seroprevalence than the young one. And also for the pigs which are kept in a household with no latrine, they are 4 times at more risk compared to the pig kept at the household with latrine. So from these findings, the study observed variation in prevalence among the two districts, Kongwa and Songwe, where the higher prevalence was observed in Songwe district due to the fact that there is variation in the percentage of lacking latrine in Kongwa and Songwe districts, where majority of the household in Songwe district, they lack hand washing facilities. And also prior to the commencement of this study, there was a campaign called Nyumbani Choo, which was conducted in Kongwa district. Maybe it is a cause of increasing number of latrine in Kongwa and the use of hand washing facilities. And this similar observation was reported by other researchers. And also adult pigs showed a significant higher seroprevalence than the young one. This is probably due to the fact that the old animal, they have been more exposed to the infection than the young ones. And also, young pigs may be protected through the passive immune transfer. So I can conclude from this finding that there is high prevalence of up to 14% in the study area, which is called for further action for this important zoonotic disease. And also, I can recommend appropriate and urgent measures should be taken to effectively control the parasite, not only in Kongwa and Songwe districts, but also in all endemic areas of Tanzania. And this appropriate measure should sensitize